when we say that when we're working with our clients, even as coaches, every client is extremely unique. So we want to study and we want to basically understand how the brain functions or how the mind really works in terms of when a person is claiming to have a challenge or a problem area. So let's look at the cascade. I'm only going to share with you a cascade. So this is what we advocate to our students where NLP can really, really be helpful for. So all of you who are watching and you might be wanting to know how could NLP basically help you guys? Or if you're my graduate and if you're graduated from us, most people ask you where can NLP utilized? NLP can be utilized. So what would those areas be like? Well, they're the four clouds. And we're going to go through one by one, everyone. And I think there's a few things that are over and above the four clouds also, but this is where NLP really becomes useful. Number one, every individual, every individual goes through a process, and that's called negative thinking. Now, there are some people who basically do go through a set of negative thinking. They have certain negative thoughts that are coming to their mind. And somehow, when there's a lot of construction of those negative thoughts or negative thinking, they basically, project and construct a behavior that is very different. So, is there anybody who thinks like that? And of course, most of us do. So, and in different age groups, there are different type of negative thinkings. So sometimes, when I go back to my good old school days when I couldn't resonate with the learning that was happening in the classroom. I just come back from US and I was in Pakistan and it was all Urdu and I couldn't understand everything. So I got fed up. In my internal representation, I said studying is really bad. And so I created a negative thinking for myself. And when that happened and that pursued for a certain period of time, then my prayers would also be associated. Ya kash agar aaj hartal ho jaye, kuch ho jaye, main school nahi jana pade, things like that. So they construct a format of negative thinking. So even when we're working with kids and children, we want to understand what are the meanings that they're attributing. And maybe there's something lacking in the sense of the meaning and the interpretations that they're creating in their internal representation that we could work on. So we want to convert all the negative thinking towards positive thinking. Now, raise your hands if you honestly know. Maybe you might not be doing negative thinking, but you do come across certain individuals in your lifespan, in your friend zone, in your circle, who might be going through certain negative thinking. And that's where NLP could become very useful. So if you know the tools and techniques of NLP, that technique is going to help them to come from negative thinking all the way towards positive thinking. We want to construct, their brains to function and their minds to basically focus on positive attributes, positive thinking, rather than the negative ones. So that's the first attribute. That's where NLP is really, really useful at. Number two, what we can look at is the negative emotions. Now, we're not talking about emotions in general. Emotions are great. If you have emotions, good or bad, they're there to serve you. There is no such thing as good emotion or a bad emotion. But yes, when an emotion or a bad emotion or a negative emotion affects you and takes you towards, disempowerment, then we're constructing that as to be a negative emotion. For example, we could take this as an, sense. So for example, let's talk about fear. Now, fear is an emotion. So it's a gift, we've been gifted by that. Is it also useful? Yes, it is. So if I take, somebody to the third story, and I tell them, oh, hey, you got to jump from the third story. So their fear should kick in, it serves them over there. No, buddy, this is dreadful. This is dangerous. And I shouldn't be doing that. So fear isn't bad. Anger isn't bad. Sadness isn't bad. But if it's not processed, if it's providing negative, results, and if it's basically getting you towards, not closer to your goal and it's disempowering you, then we want to really work on it. So we want to take all the negative emotions and construct positive learnings for our clients. So we don't convert them into positive emotions, you see. They are already emotions. We understand that emotions are not neither good or neither bad, but we're constructing positive learnings. The moment you construct positive learnings through using NLP tools and techniques, you basically allow the client to experience the emotion at a holistic level. So their intelligence goes up and their emotion goes down. Now, where they're basically in the capacity to think and take decisions for themselves and rationally work towards their, productivity. So that's what we're looking at. So first one was negative thinking, converting that into positive thinking, then negative emotions, only negative emotions, and converting them towards constructing positive learnings. Now, there are tools and techniques which we'll talk about them a little later onwards. What are the other areas where NLP can really be useful? NLP coaching can be really, really useful in terms of inner conflict. Now, all of us at certain given point, just like we talked about the emotion, we all do feel sad. We all do have anger issues. We do have certain fears. We do have certain guilts. We have certain sets of betrayals when somebody betrays us, and these emotions do make us sometimes haywire. Similarly, there are a lot of conflicts that also basically happen for us. Now, a conflict, inner conflict, is something that basically divides us into two parameters, and we really don't know what to do. Inner conflicts are something like, for example, should I basically take a break from my career and rest? Now, if I take break and if I rest, then I'm not able to earn money. So should I earn money or should I take rest? Now, when the mind is not able to decide and decipher between the two things, it doesn't do both of them. And this is like let's screw everything and let's just sit. Let's just I want to think more about what do I want to do with my life. So that basically disempowers and disengages an individual. So other areas of basically inner conflicts can be, should I settle abroad or should I live in Pakistan? Now, maybe for some client, it would be like, staying in Pakistan would be very important. For example, to say that my family is here, my mom is there, my dad is there. But there's another part of me that basically says I should also be, settling abroad because, I have higher job prospects or so that's the meaning that the client is attributing. We're not attributing it for the client, but then he's seeing inner conflict within. A funnier side would be, when people are, deciding to get married and they're like, should I get married over here or should I get married over here? So that could also be an inner conflict. So we want to basically, and the conflicts, originally are a result of basically not, let's put it this way, it's somewhat there because they're not in alignment with our values. That's how we want to basically see it. So for getting rid of inner conflicts, we work on tools and techniques for values realignment. So that's the tool and technique. So we want to get rid of the inner conflict and create values realignment for the individual. We want the parts to basically integrate to one full wholeness. We want the client to feel the sense of wholeness, completeness, inner peace. So that's the other area where NLP can become extremely useful for. So now let's go a little bit step further. So we talked about negative thinking and converting into positive thinking. We saw about emotions, and we want to get the negative emotions to convert into positive learnings. We saw inner conflict, and we want that to convert to values realignment. And now we're looking at limiting beliefs. So there are certain people who go through a major amount of limiting beliefs. Limiting belief is something basically that we attribute in terms of our own linguistic patterns, and in our own mind we create a belief system which disempowers us, which disengages us. Limiting beliefs are like, for example, um, I am not confident enough. For example, if some individual constantly attributes themselves, नहीं मेरे अंदर confidence नहीं है, is a limiting belief. Some people, basically, this was a very interesting one. I had an individual who basically went through the MBTI testing mechanism and said, Arslan, do you know why I'm not confident? Because I'm an introvert. So introversion, becoming the sense of lack of confidence, and then they create that limiting belief for themselves. Oh, I'm an extrovert. That's why I can't sit at one place and do work. Again, limiting beliefs. We don't, personality testings are just an image shot of your sequence of thinking in that particular moment. They don't define who you are as a person. Please never take them. If somebody comes up to, if some test tells you that you're an introvert, it's just your thinking level at that particular time. It's impossible to be 100% introvert. At any given time, you do go out and engage with other people. So we want to help our clients that they, basically can go and, become a better version for themselves. If somebody is introvert and they're happy with it, we're great. If it's serving them really well, they should be at that state. And in certain situations, maybe introversion is not supporting them. And they want to create a dominant, new empowering belief to basically help them to, gain more set of success for their life. That's where an NLP interventionist can help in and chip in. So limiting beliefs. मैं कमा नहीं सकता अभी मेरी उम्र ही क्या है. These are all the sequence of limiting beliefs. So we want to create, from limiting belief, we want to generate a new empowering belief. So that's the fourth area where NLP becomes extremely useful. And what are the other few areas other than these four quadrants? Well, of course, there could be areas where the client might come up and they might say, I have a negative behavior. Now, client never really says that they have a negative behavior, but they try to understand from their perspective and their model of the world that they are engaging in a behavior that is not producing results for them. For example, we had a mom who said, Arslan, I want to be a great mom, but sometimes, you know what, these emotions really kick in, and then I start shouting on my, children. Now, she's not saying I'm doing negative behavior, but she realizes the aspect that she's engaged in a behavior that is disempowering. So it can become really important for, people to create new positive behaviors and generate better positive behaviors, or behaviors that they would want to have instead of that negative behavior. And it's also useful for habits. Habits are a repetition of things that we have basically performed over and over and over again. So in our mind, what happens in the neural networks, we have constructed them. So let's say, for an example, when you're learning driving at a very, very initial state, you might not be a very expert driver at that time, but by being, practicing it every single day for an hour or two, and then you taking the car in test drives, and, learning documents, and then learning about how to basically drive, that time you basically create an expertise. You create a neural network which operates on automation, and now you're a confident driver. So while you're driving, you really don't have to see the gear while shifting. You don't have to really look at where the handbrake is. You don't have to really, it happens on autopilot. So your brain basically, attunes to it. So you've created a neural network for it. And similarly, the habits, that we have, the bad habits that we have, they're also done because we've repeated them a lot of times. It's as simple as that. And we want to basically then install new empowering habits which allow the clients to feel that sense of achievement that they would want to basically achieve for themselves. So we want to basically see their patterns, their behaviors, and we want to see how we could, basically we can navigate the client to constructing much more better habits which are empowering, much more, empowering behaviors as well. So this is a huge list, and overall, let's try to put this. We want the clients to be able to take decisions. So what happens is that when most of these graduates, when they graduate, because in NLP we're structured towards, working around on very sensitive, life, life-based coaching. So they don't understand the context of applying that into corporate settings. Now, in corporate settings, where all do I use NLP? So NLP is extremely, extremely useful. Like, for example, in areas like accepting change. Now, that's a behavior. So I can use NLP coaching for accepting change, for adaptability issues, for anger management, uh, for career development, for change of position, for example, commitment issues. Now, here I'm not using any word of therapy. These are all the areas which are really amazing where we could basically help the clients to create empowering beliefs. For example, communicating emotions only. We could work on that area. Communication issues, like, for example, the company or business or in personal positioning of your own self. Areas like, for example, conflicts and conflict resolution, how to achieve conflict resolution within the organization, understanding the cultural differences, decision making, emotional intelligence, the sense of, anybody who's, having a sense of feeling left out or left behind. Interestingly, we also use it for gender communication. It's really a privilege that, we have certain graduates who have helped, have taught us a lot. And I think NLP coaching is also really important in terms of, working with certain corporate clients and how basically they can communicate, gender communication within their organization by accepting and, acknowledging LGBT, individuals in the office. Job selection, language precision, leadership competencies, areas like, for example, performance enhancement, personal organization, presentation skills, social skills, self-esteem, stage fright, negative emotions, managing test anxieties, product, launch anxieties, time management, any set of work-life balance. So these are all the beautiful, beautiful areas where we could all, work on what NLP really, really is.